Hey everybody, welcome to another comic book review. In this video, I'll be talking about Paper Girls by Brian K. Vaughan and Cliff Chiang. This is the complete story, so this is all 30 issues of the series collected into one giant paperback volume. And it follows the story of four young girls in the late 80s, and they're all newspaper delivery girls. So they get up real early in the morning and they are the ones that toss the newspapers to people's doorsteps. And this one here, her name is Erin. She's the new one of the group. And the other three, Tiffany, Mac, and KJ, they all know one another. But Erin comes along and the four of them discover what ends up being a time machine. And from there on, you get this whole descent into time travel, and a bunch of really weird sci-fi goodness starts happening. And a lot of it is absolutely mesmerizing. Cliff Chiang's art is particularly cool. It does a great job of presenting these really wild ideas, and the colors are very, very bright. The whole book is very vibrant in terms of the colors and the art style. It really, really works for the type of story that Brian K. Vaughan is trying to tell. Um, Now, I like Brian K. Vaughan. I thought Y the Last Man was pretty good, and I also liked his story Pride of Baghdad. This it has some of my favorite moments in any of his works that I've read. Um, as a whole, I'm not sure if it's my favorite, but it's very, very close. It's between that and Y the Last Man. The only thing that really holds this book back for me is that it gets kind of convoluted in like the last three or four issues. And the ending isn't fantastic, I didn't think. I mean, it's good and it brings it to a satisfying conclusion, but it doesn't quite hit all the marks for me towards the end. Everything leading up to that, however, is brilliant. I love the way that the characters are kind of expanded upon as the story goes on. I love that you get to see their personalities unfold as the story goes on. You get to see them grow, and as they go through all these different timelines, and they see all these different events and different versions of people that they have known or knew before, even versions of themselves that they come into contact with, future versions, and sometimes past versions. It's really, really cool to see how these characters and how multiple versions of these characters have kind of changed over time. And you get to see how they evolve. And one thing about Brian K. Vaughan that I really liked in Y the Last Man, but in this, he carries it over, is his use of dream sequences. There are a lot of them in Paper Girls, and there were also a lot in Y the Last Man as well. But it's something that Brian K. Vaughan does a lot with his writing that I really appreciate. Sometimes, like when dream sequences are overused, it becomes kind of cheap. But I don't know. I liked the way they were used here, and I think there's a good amount of them that add like a fun element to the story, and they provide clues for later on as well. And events that happen later in the story are kind of foreshadowed by these dream sequences. Um, as far as like favorite aspects of the book, um, I like how this book deals with the 80s in a way that feels like nostalgic. Now, I wasn't around for the 80s, but it touches on the same nostalgia that Stranger Things did. And this came out before Stranger Things, or rather, it started its run before Stranger Things did. So the way it kind of presents these nostalgic concepts, and you get a lot of like cool 80s stuff. There are scenes where they're um, playing the Atari and playing all these old school video games. And um, the first issue is on Halloween, and you get to see the costumes that people are dressing up in. And you get a lot of references to movies that just came out that year, which is something that happened in Y the Last Man as well. Brian K. Vaughan loves his movie references and pop culture references in general. And the way they're used here to kind of um, show what timeline you're in, like what timeline the characters are in, it's really clever because there are some characters, like future versions of characters, that will be talking to past versions of characters and say stuff like, oh yeah, that's like this movie. And then the past versions of the characters are like, I have no clue what that is. And the future versions are like, oh yeah, that's right. It hasn't been released yet. So it's kind of a fun way to um, explore different timelines. And um, I don't know. I really enjoyed that. I would say that's probably my favorite aspect of this book is um, the things that kind of date the time period that is currently going on in the books. Um, yeah, so those are my thoughts on Paper Girls by Brian K. Vaughan and Cliff Chiang. I would definitely recommend this one for sure. Um, and I do think it's one of Brian K. Vaughan's better works. Um, as always, thank you very much for watching and have a great day. Look forward to more videos in the future.